There's a kind of love story people rarely admit they're fascinated by. Not the safe ones, not the predictable ones, but the stories filled with tension, obsession, danger, intensity. Stories where love feels powerful, almost overwhelming. They're called dark romance, and millions of people are drawn to them. But why? Why are we fascinated by relationships that feel risky, complicated, or emotionally intense? And what does that attraction reveal? Not about romance, but about the human mind. Tonight, we explore the psychology behind dark romance and the thin line between fantasy and reality. What dark romance really means. Dark romance isn't simply about darkness. It's about intensity. These stories often explore emotional conflict, moral ambiguity, flawed characters, power imbalance, transformation through connection. Unlike traditional romance, dark romance asks a different question. Not, will love be easy? But, what happens when love meets chaos? The appeal isn't cruelty. It's emotional gravity. People are drawn to stories where emotions feel amplified, where every decision feels high stakes, because intensity feels meaningful. The psychology of safe danger. Human brains are wired to explore danger safely. Horror movies, roller coasters, suspense stories. Dark romance works the same way. It allows people to experience powerful emotions without real-world risk. Psychologists call this controlled emotional simulation. Your brain feels tension, but knows you're safe. This creates a paradox. Fear and attraction can exist at the same time. And when those emotions mix, the experience becomes unforgettable. The shadow side of attraction. Every person has what psychologists sometimes call a shadow self. The part that contains forbidden curiosity, intense emotions, impulses we don't always express openly. Dark romance stories give that hidden emotional world a voice. They explore questions people rarely say aloud. What happens when someone sees every part of you, even the parts you hide? What happens when connection feels consuming instead of comfortable? These stories are less about unhealthy love and more about confronting emotional extremes. Why intensity feels like love. Here's something surprising. The brain often confuses intensity with connection. High emotion releases powerful chemicals associated with bonding and memory. That's why dramatic experiences feel unforgettable. Dark romance exaggerates this feeling. The emotional highs and lows create a sense of depth, even when stability is missing. But this is where fiction and reality begin to separate. Because intensity alone does not equal trust, and drama does not equal care. Fantasy versus reality. In stories, conflict creates growth. In real life, healthy relationships rely on respect, communication, emotional safety, mutual choice. Dark romance works because it exists inside narrative boundaries. Readers and viewers control when the story begins and ends. Reality doesn't offer that control. Understanding this difference is essential. The appeal of dark romance is emotional exploration, not a blueprint for real relationships. The fantasy allows people to explore complicated emotions safely. Why dark stories feel honest. Perfect love stories can feel distant, but flawed characters feel human. Dark romance resonates because it acknowledges something real. People are complicated. Love isn't always neat. Growth isn't always gentle. These stories reflect emotional struggles many people recognize internally, even if they never experience them externally. In that way, dark romance isn't about darkness. It's about emotional truth told through exaggeration. What the fascination reveals about us. The popularity of dark romance says something important. People don't just want comfort. They want meaning, intensity, transformation. They want stories that explore the full range of human emotion, not just the safe parts. Dark romance becomes a mirror, not showing who we are at our best, but showing the emotions we rarely admit we feel. Understanding the attraction. Dark romance isn't about celebrating danger. It's about understanding emotion. It allows people to step into intense emotional worlds and step back out again. And maybe that's the real reason it endures. Because beneath every dark story is a simple human desire to be seen completely, to feel deeply, and to understand the parts of ourselves we don't always show. The darkness isn't the point. Understanding is.